Some loves arrive loudly. They announce themselves. They rush in with promises, intensity, and urgency. But this one didn't. This love arrived quietly, so quietly that I didn't notice it at first. It didn't ask to be chosen. It didn't demand attention. It didn't try to prove anything. It simply stayed gentle. I met you in a season of my life where I wasn't looking for love, not because I didn't believe in it, but because I was tired of how heavy love had always felt, tired of expectations, tired of questions that sounded like pressure, tired of the unspoken rule that love had to become something more to be considered real. I had learned how to protect myself by keeping things light, careful, contained. And you didn't try to break through any of that. You didn't knock loudly on the door of my heart. You didn't push. You just stood there, patient, unassuming. And somehow, that felt safer than anything dramatic ever had. We didn't start with sparks. There was no moment where time slowed down and everything made sense. We started with small things, shared silences that didn't feel awkward, conversations that didn't try to impress, moments that didn't need to be remembered to feel meaningful. You listened more than you spoke, and when you spoke, you didn't try to sound certain about everything. You left space for my thoughts, for my moods, for the parts of me that weren't polished or easy to love. I didn't realize it back then, but that space was where I slowly began to breathe again. Love had always felt like something I had to perform before, like I needed to be more interesting, more confident, more sure. But with you, I didn't feel watched. I felt seen without being examined. You never rushed me to explain myself, never asked why I was quiet some days, never made me feel like my calm was a problem that needed fixing. You let me exist exactly as I was, and that was new to me. There was a gentleness in the way you cared. You remembered small details, not because you were trying to be romantic, but because you genuinely paid attention. The way I took my coffee, the songs I never skipped, the topics that made my voice soften when I talked about them. You noticed when I was tired before I admitted it, not by asking what was wrong, but by slowing down with me, sitting beside me instead of pulling me forward. And in a world that constantly asked me to hurry, that felt like kindness in its purest form. I think what surprised me most was how little fear there was. I didn't wake up wondering where I stood. I didn't overanalyze your words. I didn't measure my worth by how fast you replied. Your presence didn't feel conditional. You didn't make love feel like something that could disappear the moment I became inconvenient. You stayed consistent, not intense, not overwhelming, just steady. And that steadiness began to heal parts of me I didn't know were still hurting. We never talked much about the future. Not because we were avoiding it, but because we didn't feel the need to define everything. There were no grand plans, no timelines, no promises whispered late at night. And strangely enough, that didn't make the love feel smaller. It made it lighter. We focused on now, on choosing each other in ordinary moments, on being present instead of certain. And for the first time, love didn't feel like a risk I had to calculate. It felt like a place I could rest. But gentleness is often misunderstood. People assume that if love is quiet, it must be weak. That if it doesn't fight loudly, it doesn't care deeply. They don't see the strength it takes to remain kind, to choose patience, to stay soft in a world that teaches us to harden. Our love wasn't dramatic. It didn't demand attention. But it was resilient. It held space for disagreements without turning them into battles. It allowed distance without assuming abandonment. It trusted without controlling. And I began to understand that gentleness was not the absence of depth. It was the depth. Still, even the gentlest love can change. Not because it fails, but because people grow. Slowly, quietly, in different directions. We didn't end with anger. There was no betrayal, no moment where everything shattered. Just a gradual understanding that the love we shared was not meant to become something else, and accepting that hurt more than any dramatic ending ever could. Because nothing went wrong, and yet we couldn't stay. Letting go of a gentle love is a different kind of pain. There's no one to blame, no clear reason to point to, no villain in the story. Just two people acknowledging that staying would eventually require force. And our love had never been about force, so we chose honesty instead. And that choice stayed with me. For a long time after, I wondered if I would ever find that kind of love again. A love that didn't ask me to be louder. A love that didn't confuse intensity with intimacy. A love that knew how to remain kind even at the end. I realized something important then. Not all loves are meant to last forever, but some loves are meant to teach us how love should feel, and yours did that for me. Because after you, I stopped chasing chaos. I stopped mistaking anxiety for passion. I stopped believing that love had to hurt to be meaningful. I learned to recognize safety, to value calm, to trust softness. I learned that love can be quiet and still change you completely. Even now, when I think of you, there is no bitterness, just gratitude for the way you stayed gentle even when things became complicated, for the way you cared without asking for more than I could give, for the way our love ended with respect instead of resentment. Some loves burn bright and fade fast, others leave scars. But this one stayed gentle. And because of that, it stayed with me in the way I love now. If I ever love again, it won't be loud. It won't be rushed. It won't demand proof. It will feel like space, like patience, like kindness that doesn't need to be explained. It will feel like the love that once taught me that gentleness is not weakness. It is a choice, and sometimes it is the most powerful form of love we will ever know. End.